Welcome, everybody. How are you doing today? It's so very nice to have you here. And today I wanted to speak a little bit about our upcoming 3-week intensive starting on August 14th. Emptiness and love, removing the obstacles to awakening. But before I speak more about some of the themes that I want to be addressing in these 3 weeks, I just wanted to invite us to take a moment and sit together quietly here. So presence, our true nature, is already here. That's who we are. That's where everything arises from. This is what is prior to our experience. We can say this is the beginning, the middle, and the end. And so, as we were sitting quietly here for a moment, we can take another moment here and just simply check on that. Direct our attention inward. Don't just take my word for it. Let's see directly. Let's take a moment for that. So the idea that presence is something that is going to happen in the future may be one of the biggest impediments to awakening, and also the biggest misunderstanding. And even for those of us who have been doing this for quite a while, and I designed this 3-week intensive for our returning students, even though it is really open to everybody. So even if you have been doing this for a while right now, there are times and moments when we still believe that presence is not here, that there's something we have to do, that there's somewhere we have to go, and there's that mental, postponement, right? There's this idea, that not right now. Maybe I'm not worthy enough, or maybe I'm not good enough, or maybe I didn't do this or that, or maybe I'm just too busy, or maybe it's not the time, right? Whatever you believe in that moment, that really takes our attention from knowing presence directly right now. Good, beautiful. So just take another moment and let's really, really notice that. Because that is where awakening is, right? That is where awakening happens. That's where trust is. That's where we really know our true nature. And we need to keep coming back to this over and over and over and over again, by whatever means necessary, right? Until eventually, consciousness itself pulls you in. Right? Eventually, presence, consciousness, our true nature, pulls us in. So awakening is really a movement or a journey away from the gross perceptions or the sensory perceptions, the perceptions of the mind, and a movement into the more subtle perceptions, a movement inward. And when I say gross perceptions, senses and the mind and senses describe the world for us. It tells us how the world is. This is what it looks like. This is here and this is there and this is me and this is you and there's a distance and there's this and there's that. And we are used to relying on that description. Not that that description is wrong, it's just that we are used to relying on that. So we believe that's the way things are. Now, what a spiritual journey is, and what journey towards awakening is, and what happens when we are, that's really the definition of meditation also, which is resting in our true nature. We begin to move away from those gross perceptions. We move away from that. We move away from the reliance on the mind. And we go deeper and deeper into a more and more subtle perceptions. That's where you begin to see maybe, the vibrancy of things. You begin to see energy. You begin to see things a little different, And this is still phenomena, but the reason why it changes like that is because your attention is moving deeper in. It's so important, so important, because that's where awakening is, right? Awakening is that moment of fully, truly resting here, right? Letting yourself be totally pulled in, right? That's also, and I don't want to go in detail into this today, but that's also where we at some point encounter what is called the quiet mind. Where things are still, when there's, nothing is happening, and yet there's still something there, right? There's still something there, there's still somebody there, right? Quiet mind is the last stage before the bliss of our true nature, and then eventually before awakening. So these perceptions, that we are used to, this is the other impediment to awakening. We so believe the solidity of things. We believe the solidity of objects. We believe the solidity of experience. And so we also believe the solidity of the mind, solidity of the senses, solidity of the sense of I, solidity of this body. And because that's a habit, right? It's so... it may be actually refreshing for you to hear that, that believing that you are the mind, the body, is a habit, like drinking coffee, right? It's just we have been doing this habit for much longer. Habitually we identify ourselves as that, right? And it's so important to know that, because otherwise we might think we have to get rid of it. Let's get rid of the mind. Let's get rid of the ego. Let's get rid of the identification with the body, which that itself is a willful action of the ego, body, mind. Let's get rid of the identification with the body. That's body, mind speaking. Let's get rid of the I. Let's get rid of the ego. That's body, mind speaking. And even though for many of us, or many of you who have been doing this for a long time, you might already know that in this very obvious way, but there are still very subtle ways in which we still do that, right? We still want to be in charge, we want to get it, we want to realize, we want to move away from this, right? And that so often is just the effort of the body-mind itself. So That's the other impediment, believing the reality of objects and believing the reality of experience. And how do we counteract that? How do we come out of that? There are many different ways, and one of the ways is the, does this belong to you meditation that we will be practicing in our 3-week intensive. And the most direct way, always the most direct way, is to simply come here, again, by whatever means necessary. Good, beautiful. To keep realizing the emptiness of all experience. And that brings me very briefly to the subject of emptiness and love, and maybe some other time I will be speaking more, and definitely in our 3-week intensive speaking more, because emptiness, we need to really realize emptiness, we have to let go of believing or identifying ourselves as anything. We really have to move away from believing the solidity of objects, the solidity of experience, our identification with the body mind. We really have to move away from that, right? That's how we realize emptiness. Every moment you do that, every moment you come here, that's really a moment of emptiness, right? It's a moment of realizing, you're not paying attention to body, mind, objects, experiences. You're just letting yourself rest here. That's a moment of emptiness. And then also, not only this whole thing is really a love affair with our true nature. We sometimes say, either know that you are this or be in love with this. And the reason why love affair describes it so well is because love affair is really in surrender, right? When you are in love, you are not in a willful place of wanting to make something happen. You are trembling with, the strength of the feeling that you experience. And you are just in surrender. You are just awaiting your beloved. You are just awaiting the meeting. And another aspect of love is when we realize that everything is present as well. There's so much more I could be speaking about this, and of course, I will be speaking more about this when we meet together in our 3-week intensive. And I want to remind you again, if you like these videos, please subscribe, please like, please comment. You have been commenting more, and I really appreciate that. That makes us more visible. More people can watch this, more people can benefit from this. And I'm looking forward to speaking with you and meeting you all very soon.